The security cameras caught everything: the midnight rain, the red dress, and a single dad pulling over when everyone else sped past. Moments later, that same woman, barefoot, shaking, collapsed into his arms. He didn't know her name. He didn't know she could change his life. But what she did the next morning left him completely stunned. What would you have done in his place? Stay with us. And if this moment makes you believe kindness still matters, tap that heart and share it forward. The rain came down like silver strings pulled tight across Willow Creek, singing against the hood of Jack Turner's old Ford as the wipers kept time. Midnight had folded the town into a sleepy hush: closed storefronts, a diner's neon sputtering, the black ribbon of County Road 12 shining slick beneath the headlights. In the rearview mirror, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, slept in a small kingdom of blanket and stuffed rabbit. Her mouth parted, the breath of a child who trusted that morning would come. Jack's hands ached from the garage's double shift, the faint smell of engine oil living in his skin no matter how hard he scrubbed. But he felt that good exhaustion, the kind that meant rent might get paid and the pantry might hold something more than peanut butter. Then he saw her, a flash of red at the edge of the road in front of Rusty's tap. Bare shoulders, heels sinking into wet gravel, a woman swaying like a candle flame in wind. Jack eased off the gas. The bar's door swung open and laughter spilled out, the careless kind that always made him brace. The woman reached for the door jamb, missed, and clipped her hip on the iron rail with a sound that made him wince. He checked the rear locks, habit, muscle memory, then pulled over beneath the sagging awning of a shuttered pawnshop. "Stay asleep, kiddo," he whispered, tucking the blanket around Lily's small shoulder before he stepped into the rain. Up close, the woman's lipstick had smudged, but her eyes were clear in a way that didn't match the lurching steps. She wore a red cocktail dress and no coat. "Ma'am," Jack said, voice careful the way he wished strangers would talk to his daughter. "You okay there?" She blinked at him, fighting for focus. Sorry, I just need—" Her pupils were pinpricks. The hand she lifted toward him was trembling. Not theatrical, but deep in the bones trembling. Jack smelled something sweet, but not alcohol, more like a spilled soda. He unzipped his jacket and draped it over her shoulders before he could think about it, a reflex as sure as checking a torque spec. "Let's get you out of the rain." Someone behind them laughed. "She's had more than the music tonight," and the door banged shut again. "I'm Jack," he said, guiding her toward his truck. "What's your name?" "Ava," she managed, then sank into the passenger seat with a shiver. "Ava what?" "Hart," she said, and the name sounded like it hurt a little coming out. Jack snapped the seatbelt, angled the vents to blow warm air, and set the travel mug of lukewarm coffee in her hands just to give them something to hold. "Do you have an address? Someone I can call?" She pressed fingertips to her temple. "My phone. It's dead. This is embarrassing." She smiled a small, apologetic smile that fell away as her breathing turned shallow. Jack felt his chest tighten with a recognition he didn't expect. Lily sometimes woke panicked, breath racing, mind spiraling, and he had learned the simple arithmetic of calming. Lower the noise, lower the light, lower the demands. He spoke quietly. "Do you happen to be diabetic?" Her head moved almost imperceptibly. "Pre-diabetic," she whispered. "I didn't eat dinner. Got lightheaded. The song—" Her hands shook harder. Jack reached into the glove box for the crinkled foil of fruit chews he kept for road sugar crashes and for Lily's long car rides. "These aren't gourmet, but they'll help." He watched her chew, swallow, close her eyes. Color crept back into her face, yet her shoulders stayed tight as wire. The rain softened to a steady drumbeat on the roof. Jack glanced back at Lily. She hadn't stirred. He tried calling a taxi, then another. The lines rang and rang. County Road 12 liked to pretend it was a city when it came to rent, and absolutely a countryside when it came to services after 10 p.m. "Okay," he said, decision landing in him like a click of a well-fitted part. "We're 6 minutes from my building. It's dry. You can warm up, charge your phone, and I'll take you wherever you need to go in the morning." Ava's eyes opened, wary. "I don't want to cause trouble." "Trouble's what happens when we walk away," Jack said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. He pulled into the cracked lot of Mapleview Apartments, a place that had once been new enough to promise and was now old enough to apologize. He carried Lily up the stairs first, her head tucked under his chin, then returned for Ava and his jacket that looked comically large on her. Inside, his unit was what a single dad's place is, clean in the way of daily effort, cluttered in the way of a life being lived. The kitchen table a battlefield of crayons and unopened mail. He clicked on the lamp instead of the overhead light, set out a chipped mug for water, and guided Ava to the thrift store sofa that had surprised him by being comfortable. "I'll stay in the kitchen," he said, because he knew that mattered. "Phone's there. Charger's on the counter. If you feel shaky again, I've got a glucose meter for Lily's checkups. It's not fancy, but it works." Ava's eyes softened at Lily. "She's beautiful," she murmured, glancing toward the bedroom where a nightlight threw a small crescent of gold on the floor. "She gets that from her mom," Jack said before he could stop himself, the old ache moving through him cleanly now, like rain through gutters. He filled a saucepan with water and stirred in instant oats, then added the last of the cinnamon, because it felt like a small kindness he could afford. When he turned back, Ava had pulled his jacket tight, chin tucked down inside the collar like a bird nestling into a safe branch. On the coffee table, a small silver locket had tumbled from her bag. Jack reached for it to set it aside, and the hinge gave way. Inside, a black and white photo of a man with a musician's posture, shoulders slightly forward, the look of someone who listened hard for a living. Tucked behind the photo, a torn scrap of paper held 4 penciled notes of a melody and a phrase written in a clean, careful hand. "No one sleeps alone tonight." Jack closed the locket gently and set it in the porcelain bowl on the windowsill, where he kept keys and the odd screws that never seemed to belong to any machine he worked on. He scribbled a note. "You're safe. Tea in the cabinet. Wake me if you need anything. Jay," and propped it against the lamp. When Ava's breathing evened out, he slipped back to Lily's room, kissed her hair, and stood for a moment in the doorway watching both of them. A daughter who believed the world was mostly kind, and a stranger who had walked into the storm alone and somehow ended up here. He didn't know yet about Hearthstone or buildings or boardrooms or the way a single act of decency can turn a life. But he knew this. Some nights your job is to keep the light on and the kettle warm until the hard part passes. The rain kept time against the window. Somewhere in the walls the old radiator knocked a rhythm. Jack, who had not sung out loud since the funeral, found himself humming 4 uncertain notes that felt like a hand offered in the dark. When Jack woke, the apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and rain. For a second, the night before blurred into a dream, until he saw his jacket folded neatly on the armrest and a faint indentation where Ava had slept. Lily's laughter echoed from the kitchen. "Daddy, she made pancakes!" Jack blinked, rubbing his eyes. Ava stood by the stove, wearing one of his old flannel shirts over her red dress, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The sight startled him, not because of how she looked, but because she belonged to this morning too easily, as if the storm had simply brought her home. "I hope you don't mind," she said, turning with a smile that was steadier now. "I wanted to thank you for last night. I wasn't drunk." Jack leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Yeah, I figured that out somewhere between the fruit chews and the glucose test." Her laugh was soft, but carried an undercurrent of something heavier. It was a blood sugar drop, she explained, and a panic attack. The song that played in the bar. It was written by someone I lost. I didn't even realize I'd walked out until I was halfway to the road. She set a plate on the table and added gently, "You didn't have to stop, but you did. So, thank you." Jack shrugged, pretending nonchalance. "It's what you do when someone's in trouble." "Not everyone does," she murmured, then glanced toward Lily. "You've raised her well. She offered me her stuffed rabbit last night when she woke up. Said, 'It helps when you can't sleep.' That's a big heart in a small body." Lily beamed, syrup on her chin. "She was cold, Daddy. I told her you fix everything." Jack smiled and ruffled her hair. "Not everything, kiddo." When Ava gathered her things, she pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it onto the counter. "For gas and your trouble," she said quietly. Jack didn't even look at it. "Keep it. You needed help, not a transaction." Something in her eyes shifted, like a chord resolving. "Then at least promise you'll let me return the favor someday." He nodded, more to end the conversation than agree. After she left, the apartment felt too still. Jack found the note she'd written. "Thank you for your kindness. You saved me in more ways than you know," and set it beside the bowl holding her silver locket. He meant to return it that afternoon. But life, as always, had other plans. Around noon, a notice appeared on the building's door. "Rent increase effective immediately. Property to be redeveloped." Jack exhaled a curse under his breath. He'd heard the rumors for months. A new investor group taking over Mapleview, planning to gut it for luxury condos. He looked up at the flickering hallway light and muttered, "Figures." By the time he picked Lily up from school, the tenant's chat was buzzing with panic. But when he came home that evening, a fresh paper was taped over the first. "Notice suspended pending review." Someone had signed it, A. Hartstone, interim director. Jack froze. The name hit him like a wrench slipping from his hand. Hartstone. Ava Hart. She hadn't just been another stranger on a rainy road. She was the one holding the pen that could erase his home. He barely had time to process when he heard Lily squeal outside. "She came back, Daddy." Ava stood in the courtyard, this time in jeans and a light sweater, holding a picnic basket and 2 paper bags. "Lunch," she said, a little breathless. "I owed you that much." "You didn't owe me anything," Jack said, wary. "Actually," she countered gently, "I think I did." She spread a blanket near the playground, while Lily ran off to join other kids. Inside the basket were sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of homemade soup. Jack sat down, suspicion giving way to reluctant curiosity. "So," he said slowly, Hartstone?" Ava sighed. "Yeah, that's me. Hartstone Foundation. We own this property." "So the woman I brought home last night," Jack said, the corner of his mouth tightening, "is the one deciding whether my kid has a roof over her head." "Was," she corrected softly. "I was supposed to sign the redevelopment contract this morning. I didn't." Jack looked up sharply. "You didn't?" "No," she said, meeting his gaze. "After last night, I couldn't. I read your note, saw how you took care of someone you didn't know, how your daughter shared the little she had. I realized I'd been sitting in boardrooms talking about revitalizing communities without ever stepping inside one. You gave me a glimpse of what I was about to destroy." He searched her face for irony, for some trace of guilt or performance, but there was only sincerity and fatigue. "Why were you out there alone?" he asked. "Because I didn't want to be anyone's project or headline," she admitted. "I just wanted to feel ordinary for one night, to listen to music, and not be the woman who failed to save the person she loved." The wind carried the faint clang of a swing set. Jack looked away first. You don't owe me explanations, Ava. Maybe not, she said, but I owe you honesty. Her eyes drifted toward the apartment windows. That locket I left. It's a promise I made to someone who believed kindness was the only currency that never loses value. You reminded me of that. She stood and brushed crumbs from her hands. If you don't mind, I'd like to stop by later. I'll tell you and Lily the story behind it. It's time someone heard it. Jack hesitated, then nodded. As she walked away, sunlight cut through the thinning clouds, glinting off the silver locket in the window above them. He watched her go, the sound of her footsteps fading under the whisper of rain returning, and wondered what kind of storm she'd really come from, and whether she was about to change his life as much as he'd unknowingly changed hers. A week later, the rhythm of Mapleview Apartments had changed in ways Jack couldn't explain. Maybe it was the smell of Ava's soup drifting down the hallway, or the sound of Lily's laughter echoing louder now that she wasn't afraid to play outside. Whatever it was, the air felt lighter, like someone had opened a window that had been painted shut for years. Ava started coming by after work. No grand gestures, no meetings or announcements, just a quiet consistency. She'd bring groceries, recipes, and that gentle kind of energy that made even silence feel full. Jack, who had never let anyone into his small routines, found himself letting her. One Saturday morning, she appeared with a box labeled Project, her smile mischievous. You said this neighborhood used to have a diner with a piano, right? The Rusty Spoon, closed after the owner passed, Jack said. Place has been boarded up for years. Well, she said, tapping the box, I got the key. Technically, the foundation still owns the property. I thought we could do something with it. Jack arched an eyebrow. We? You fix things, she said simply. I start things and never finish. Maybe together we can balance that out. The piano inside the diner was a ghost. Its once white keys had yellowed, the wood scarred by time and spilled coffee, but Jack could see the potential beneath the ruin. As he pried the back open, dust rose like memory. Ava stood nearby, fingertips grazing the keys. My mother taught me to play, she murmured. After she died, I stopped. Then I met someone who reminded me why music mattered. He was a session guitarist. He used to say, every heart's got its own tuning fork. You just have to find the right note. Jack didn't look up. The man in the photo? She nodded. We were supposed to record a song together. Something simple. Then the crash happened. I never sang again after the funeral. The song was unfinished. That's what's written inside the locket. She swallowed hard. The night you found me, they played that song in the bar. It felt like being hit by lightning and drowning at the same time. Jack paused his work, wiping his hands on a rag. You don't have to explain. Grief's just love that doesn't know where to go. Her eyes met his, and for a brief, fragile moment, both of them understood something wordless about loss. They spent the next few days repairing what could be saved. Jack replaced a few strings, adjusted the hammers. Ava sanded and polished the outer shell until it gleamed. Lily came by with her crayons and decorated a cardboard sign. The listening place, open soon. The idea was simple but beautiful. Saturday afternoons for kids in the neighborhood to sit, listen, breathe, and learn small songs. Ava wanted to teach them rhythm through breathing exercises, a practice she'd learned in therapy. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. She called it singing without sound. The first session was awkward. The children giggled, the parents hovered, and Jack worried it would collapse under its own sincerity. But then Ava started to hum. Just a note, trembling but true. A sound so soft it felt like it came from inside the room rather than her throat. The kids quieted. Even the hum of the old refrigerator seemed to fade. Jack stood near the doorway, arms crossed, and felt something inside him unclench. That night, after Lily went to bed, Ava knocked on his door. I made something, she said, holding out her phone. The video was grainy, Ava's voice singing a lullaby over the sound of rain. The melody was delicate, only a few bars long, but the lyrics caught in his throat. No one sleeps alone tonight. No one fights the dark unseen. The screen shifted. Photos of Lily asleep. His jacket draped around Ava's shoulders. The repaired piano glowing in lamplight. "You recorded this?" he asked, stunned. "I thought I couldn't sing anymore," she said softly. "Turns out I just needed the right key." He couldn't find words. For the first time since his wife's passing, he felt peace instead of guilt when music filled his home. That night, Lily slept through without nightmares. Jack sat in the quiet living room, phone still glowing, heart pounding like an engine hitting perfect rhythm. But peace, he knew, never lasted long. By midweek, rumors spread through the complex. About Ava, about favoritism, about some relationship between her and the mechanic who'd suddenly stopped paying rent increases. At the garage, Jack's boss pulled him aside. "I don't care what charity you're mixed up in, Turner. You're making us look bad. Clients are talking." "You know me," Jack said evenly. "I fix cars. I go home. That's it." "Then keep it that way," the boss snapped. But the words lingered, the old shame crawling back. Poor man with a kid, taking pity from the rich woman. That evening, when Ava stopped by with soup and found his door locked, she left the container outside with a note. "You fixed the piano. Don't stop there. Some things worth saving take time and courage." Inside, Jack watched the steam rise from the soup through the glass and wondered whether kindness always came with a cost, and if he had the strength to pay it again. Autumn rolled into Willow Creek with the kind of wind that carried change whether people wanted it or not. Jack felt it first in the garage, the tense silence from his coworkers, the glances that slid away too quickly. By Monday, the whispers had turned into accusations. Someone had filmed him walking Ava to her car after one of the community music sessions, Lily skipping beside them. The video had been edited cruelly, painting the picture of a mechanic entangled with the wealthy woman behind the foundation. By noon, his boss called him into the office. "You're a good worker, Turner," the man said, not meeting his eyes. "But I can't have this kind of attention around the shop. Clients are nervous. They think we're in the middle of some publicity stunt." "You think I'd use my kid like that?" Jack's voice was quiet but edged. "I think perception is reality, and perception's killing us." The man sighed, sliding an envelope across the desk. "I'll mark it as voluntary resignation. Easier that way." Jack took it without a word. Outside, he sat in his truck for a long time, the envelope limp in his hands, before starting the engine. That night, the streets of Willow Creek felt emptier than usual. Ava hadn't come by. He didn't blame her. The scandal would reach her world faster, louder. He reheated the soup she'd left days ago, the one she'd made with too much garlic, and watched Lily draw by the window. Her crayon lines showed a house with music notes floating above it. "It's ours," she said simply. Jack smiled for her sake, but the ache in his chest made it feel like pretending. 2 days later, it happened. A small boy from the apartment complex collapsed during playtime. His breathing was shallow, lips blue. Panic rippled through the courtyard. Adults shouting for an ambulance, but none arriving fast enough. Then Ava appeared, pushing through the crowd. She knelt beside the child, voice steady. "Asthma. Give me space." From her bag, she pulled an inhaler and a small spacer tube, moving with calm precision. "Inhale, hold, exhale. Good. One more." Within minutes, the boy's color returned. When the paramedics finally arrived, they found Ava still holding his hand, her voice a whisper of reassurance. The parents wept, thanking her over and over. Jack stood at the edge, stunned. Not by her composure, but by the realization that she had saved a life in the very place people accused her of exploiting. That evening, she came to his door. Her hands were trembling when he opened it. "I heard about the garage," she said softly. I'm sorry. Don't be, Jack replied. Wasn't your fault. Maybe it is, she admitted. I should have known the backlash would come. The board's furious. They want me to sell the building immediately to calm investors. So you lose your job too? She nodded. If I don't sign tomorrow morning, I'll be removed. Then you'll do what you have to, he said, his tone distant. No one can blame you for surviving. Ava shook her head. That's just it. If I sell, I survive. But everyone else here loses their home. She reached into her pocket and drew out the silver locket. The clasp had been repaired, the surface polished until it gleamed. You once told me grief is love with nowhere to go. Maybe it's time I give mine somewhere. She placed the locket in his palm. If I can't fix this, promise me you'll keep the music going. For Lily. For this place. He stared at her, words failing. Ava, what are you planning? Something reckless, she said, and smiled through tears. The next morning, the town gathered for what was supposed to be a standard press conference announcing the sale of Mapleview. Reporters, residents, and tenants crowded outside the diner that now served as the listening place. Ava stood at the podium, the wind tugging at her hair, and began to speak, not as an executive, but as a neighbor. For months, I've been told to think in numbers, profit margins, occupancy rates, redevelopment yield. But when you walk these halls, when you hear a child laugh, or a mechanic fix a broken piano so a song can live again, you realize profit has no heartbeat. Cameras flashed. Her voice steadied. The Heartstone Foundation will not sell this building. Instead, we're launching a new initiative, tenant to owner. We'll transfer units to the families who live here, funded by the Community Trust. It won't make headlines. It won't make millions, but it will make homes. Murmurs spread through the crowd, some incredulous, others moved. Then Ava did something no one expected. She held up her phone and played the lullaby video. Her voice filled the courtyard. No one sleeps alone tonight. No one fights the dark unseen. Children stilled. Adults lowered their phones. This, she said softly, is what a home sounds like. By the time the song ended, the applause was thunderous. The board of directors behind her sat motionless, furious. Within an hour, Ava's assistant confirmed what she already knew. She was suspended indefinitely. Yet when she stepped off the stage, Jack was waiting at the edge of the crowd. You really are something, Ava Hart, he said quietly. So are you, she replied. You're the reason I remembered what courage sounds like. He took her hand, rough palms closing over her trembling ones, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. Spring returned to Willow Creek the way forgiveness does, quietly, without asking for permission. The maple trees along the street wore new leaves, and laughter began to echo again through the once silent courtyard of Mapleview Apartments. The tenant-to-owner program had taken root faster than anyone expected. Where there had once been peeling paint and eviction notices, there were now flower boxes and kids' drawings taped to windows. The place felt alive, as if the building itself had decided to believe in people again. Jack had changed too. He wasn't the tired mechanic watching life from the edges anymore. The Heartstone Foundation, now under new, more compassionate leadership, had asked him to oversee a new workshop inside the converted diner. The old listening place had been transformed into a hybrid space, half community garage, half music hall. Jack spent his mornings teaching teenagers how to tune engines, his afternoons fixing bicycles for kids, and his evenings tightening the bolts on a second-hand piano that refused to stay in tune but refused even harder to stay silent. Lily became his assistant, running around with a clipboard she decorated with glitter stickers, assigning imaginary repair tickets to anyone who looked sad. Emotional checkup, she'd announce, handing out cookies as if they were prescriptions. The program was thriving, but not because of the money. It worked because it gave people a reason to stay, to help. to listen. Ava came back quietly after her suspension, without fanfare or press releases. She'd lost her corporate title, but not her purpose. She started teaching music therapy classes twice a week in the same diner she'd once fought to save. The sign above the door, hand-painted by Lily, read, "Breathe, listen, begin again." The kids called her Miss Ava, though everyone in town knew she was the one who'd defied the investors. Sometimes Jack would watch her during those sessions, her voice soft and sure as she guided the children through the breathing rhythm. 4, 7, 8. The melody of her lullaby had become the center's unofficial anthem. Even the local news picked it up once, calling it a song that built a home. One afternoon, months after the press conference, Ava found Jack in the workshop, tightening bolts on an old go-kart Lily had outgrown. She held out something small and familiar, the mended silver locket. "You left this on the piano," she said. "I thought you might want to keep it." He shook his head. "It belongs to you." "It did," she said, smiling gently. "But maybe it belongs here now, to the music we built together." She opened it, showing the same photo and the finished line of lyrics she had added beneath the original notes. "We don't walk alone tonight." Jack exhaled, a slow, steady breath that carried more gratitude than words. "You ever think about finishing that song properly?" She laughed softly. "With who playing piano?" "You're looking at him," he said, nodding toward the upright he'd been quietly repairing for weeks. "I had help tuning it, from a 7-year-old with opinions." "Strong opinions," Ava teased. That evening they hosted a small celebration, the first official home day, marking the anniversary of the foundation's new beginning. The courtyard was strung with lights, the smell of soup and cinnamon drifting through open windows. Families brought dishes, children danced, and laughter blended with the rustle of spring air. At the center, on the same piano that once gathered dust, Ava played. Her voice carried over the crowd, warm, unguarded, alive. Jack accompanied her, hands steady on the keys, Lily sitting beside them with her rabbit on her lap. The lyrics had grown since that night she first recorded them. Now the refrain was fuller, anchored by hope. No one sleeps alone tonight. No one stands apart from light. Every heart finds its own key. Just breathe, just stay, just see. When the last note faded, there was a moment of stillness before the applause rose. Sincere, unpolished, human. The kind that fills cracks you didn't know were there. Afterward, as the crowd drifted away and the fairy lights dimmed, Ava turned to Jack. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think healing was about forgetting, but it's really about building something new around what you can't forget." Jack nodded, glancing toward Lily, chasing fireflies in the dark. "Yeah," he murmured, "like learning a new song from an old melody." She reached into her bag and pulled out his jacket, the same one he'd given her that first rainy night. Inside, stitched along the lining, was a single word embroidered in tiny cursive: Lily. "She helped me with it," Ava said. "Every hero deserves his armor back." Jack laughed quietly, shaking his head. "I think I'm fresh out of hero." "Maybe," she said, "but you're the reason a whole street sleeps safe tonight." He looked down at the jacket, then at her, then at the piano. "Stay for dinner?" "I thought you'd never ask," she smiled. Later, as Lily curled up between them on the couch, Ava rested her head against Jack's shoulder. Outside, the wind rustled through the maples, carrying fragments of song from open windows. For the first time in a long while, Jack didn't worry about tomorrow. Because home, he realized, wasn't a place you fought to keep. It was something you built, one act of kindness at a time. Sometimes, the greatest miracles don't come wrapped in wealth or status. They arrive quietly, in the form of a single act of kindness on a rainy night. Jack never imagined that helping a stranger would rebuild not just a home, but a whole community, and teach him that family is something we choose to build, one small mercy at a time. If this story reminded you that love and compassion can still change the world, take a second to share it with someone who needs hope today, because you never know whose storm your light might guide through.